The Healing Spring Show, healing families and communities by breaking the stigma of addiction and expanding the scope of recovery. Now here's your host, John Edmondson.
A question that I had, and I heard about this idea of neuroception, and I was really fascinated by it. And today we have somebody who is an expert in the field who's going to tell us all about it. Dr. Bruce Wayne Meleski, the founder of Neuroception 360, and a very innovative man bringing multiple modalities together to make change in your life. Dr. Mel, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, glad to have you. So the first question is, who is Dr. Mel?
Well, Dr. Mel is someone who spent his career in human performance, starting with sports and high athletes, professional athletes, collegiate athletes, and we help them perform at their peak. Strength, speed, jumping ability, endurance. And now I've taken it into the mind. Over the last 10 years, I started working on taking the concepts of training the body into now training the mind.
Wow. So originally when you started, it was actually the NFL.
Yeah, the NFL, the NBA, college football and all sports, basketball, swimming, etc.
All of it. And from what I heard from some of our conversations off camera, you were saying that you didn't just kind of go in and punch a clock and run people through a system. You actually, from what I understand, created a whole new system in the way in which people train and work out.
Exactly. It was periodization. To optimize your performance, you want to, have slower days and more high peak days. Today you see like high intensity training. People do a lot of high intensity training. Well, that's obviously a high intensity day. There may be a long duration day, slow and easy or slow and steady type of exercise. And so we've taken these same concepts of training, intensity, duration, frequency, and applied it to the mind. And that's what part of the way we balance neuroception.
So that was the word we started with, neuroception. I've been wondering about this for a while. Is how do you describe that? So you went initially from the NFL and you train people in a very different way to where there's the highs and lows, no longer this standardization that doesn't work. So now optimizing their bodies, optimizing their minds with neuroception. What is neuroception?
Well, neuroception the definition of it is the neural circuits that decipher whether a situation is safe, dangerous, or life-threatening. So I call it like fight or flight 2.0. We all have heard of fight or flight, but that's a stimulus response type of system. You get a stimulus and then you fight or flight type of thing, right? And that's how most people think of it. Neuroception is more of a balancing act. It takes signals from the brain as well as signals from the body and determines the emotional state of the situation. And it's doing that continuously. Ception means recursive. So neuroception is this recursive process that's going on, and most of it's subconscious, so we're unaware of it.
We're not even thinking about it.
No, we're not thinking about it, but we know we have language for it, like gut feeling or heartfelt. People can point to where their body stores stress or where the anxiety originates. A lot of people in their stomach or their chest.
Right.
And they say, well, where's the anxiety? And so our program helps people become aware of those initial points of entry into an anxious state of mind.
And that's interesting because you said it was basically fight, flight, or freeze 2.0. So this isn't just being able to manage, like as therapists, we talk about the same stuff. Where do you feel the stress in your body? What is that like for you? Now we can back it up by science, so we don't sound so woo-woo anymore. But you said 2.0. What does that mean?
Well, the Polyvagal Theory added not only fight, flight, or freeze, but it also added the social engagement component. And that's really something that we see in mammals. And neuroception is part of the Polyvagal Theory by Stephen Porges, who introduced that in the early 90s, about 25 years ago. And the research at first wasn't really focused on applications in therapy and changing people's brains, but over the last 10 or 15 years, it's just exploded.
And you said polyvagal theory. So I've heard that before when I'm working with clients. Can you, if someone's watching and is trying to figure out what that means, can you help us understand that a little bit?
Yeah, the polyvagal theory is the nervous system, the vagus nerves that communicate from the body to the mind. We think of it, the sensory nerves, the somatosensory nerves, but then there's also the expression of the faces. So we're very social animals as humans, and mammals in general are social. Humans take it to another level. We can talk, we see smiles, we see reactions to people's faces, we can see anger and angst in people's faces. So a lot of times when we have clients in our program, their whole look changes by the end of the program. The tension and anxiety and trauma that is etched in their face gets released. And they look different.
Wow. Wow, so you're saying that the polyvagal, it's related to everything: survival, instinctual connection, the expressions on our face, how we manage that. And then you leap to something, we got to hear about this. You have a process to help people do this, to work through and use that to their advantage and or manage it and get it back online again, this fight, flight, or freeze?
That's exactly right. So most of the therapies out there are what we call top-down or cognitive type therapies. So you think of classic stress management, identify the stress, anticipate when you may be in a stressful situation, make an adjustment. It's a lot of behavioral change. It's a lot of, thinking about how it is. The reality is that most of these stressors originate in the body. So being a physiologist and being in sports and training people to be stronger and faster, in the beginning of my career, it made sense that I start looking at how to create the body to calm the mind rather than to excite the mind.
How to create the body to calm the mind.
Right.
So when you say top down, you're talking like everyone's trying to work up here to get down to here.
Right.
And you're doing the reverse.
Exactly. We're balancing the reverse. Now things like meditation and Tai Chi, there are embodied therapies, but what we've developed, the Mind Alive Now system, is high intensity. It's sort of like a high intensity calming system. So everyone who gets an experience takes about 40 minutes. They'll always be ultra relaxed. And that process of being ultra relaxed creates a whole new neural pathway in the brain, one that's calm and one that's peaceful and one that is happy.
Right. And all that is what you're saying is neuroception.
That's neuroception. Neuroception is the balancing of the emotional brain.
Oh, okay, I get it. So neuroception is the literal balancing of the brain, the emotional brain.
The emotional brain, balancing of the emotional brain. So we stay, copacetic, balanced,
happy. And calm.
Not, we all know people who, are get upset, dysregulated, they can't really focus. And some people are doing that a lot, right? And they need an intervention of some type. And so people come to me who want to calm their body, and they know their mind is racing. Remember, the ception part is the recursive part. So if a person gets anxious about something, we always know that they're losing energy, right? If you're worried about something, it could be valid, like your mom's in the hospital, right? And you're worried about it, and you wake up at 2 a.m. wondering how she's doing. And that's all normal types of stuff, right? But it is evoking a physiological response that's anxious.
Yeah, and you said a lot of people don't want to feel anxious more and more. I was thinking that was me earlier today, right? Running through traffic, going through different things, feeling anxious, feeling the stress. And up here, I know, I can work it through in my brain, right? Well, everything's fine, okay, it's going to work out. But then when all the fires are going off during the day, for a lot of us who are entrepreneurs or work in, the clinical field, and we're dealing with everyone's stress and management, then we get offline a little bit.
Of course, yeah. It's very, very easy to do that. Neuroception to me is to the mind and the brain what aerobics is to the heart and the lungs.
That sounds really interesting. So what is it? Tell me more about that.
Well, that idea came to me about 7 years ago. I was in Houston, and there was a professor of physiology, emeritus from Baylor University. His name is Dick Cooey. And he told this story. And Dick said, in his words, he said, back in the early 70s, Ken Cooper came to me and he said, Dick, do you think I can make the word aerobics a consumer term? And Dick continued and he said, I told Ken, hell no. That's a scientific term. It will never happen. And of course, this was 2013. So, of course, it happened. And everyone knows what aerobics is today, right? And so at that moment, I got the idea, what's equivalent for the mind? We have the mindfulness, but that's not really descriptive in a scientific way. And so after a number of years of looking at it, I found neuroception, and neuroception being that balancing act, part of the polyvagal theory, which is the latest neuroscience on neuromodulation. So I decided that to look at all the different things that affect neuroception, and there are many. So we have what we call the Neuroception Project, where in Austin we are actually gathering information about all the alternative care in this group of wellness professionals, and how each of them work on neuroception for their clients from a wide range of different types of things. If you're working on gut health, the gut and the brain are related to nutritional balance, right? We all know that more serotonin is made in the gut than made in the brain. So there's that relationship if they're a functional medicine doctor. If they do retreats, and do meditation retreats, of course, that's balancing neuroception. If they do different types of sensory, sound healing types of things, or Tai Chi, or exercise, or so on, they all are contributing to neuroception. So it's like aerobics gave us a framework, gave the consumer a framework to know that they are improving their heart. And people know little things like walking up the flight of stairs versus taking the elevator. That gives you a little aerobic boost.
What you said is really powerful. When I think and I hear people talk about mindfulness, I love the term. I'm a mindfulness instructor, right, at Healing Springs Ranch. It's such a confusing thing because they say mindfulness and they'll go, oh, well, I do yoga. Oh, I do Tai Chi. Well, I do meditation. I'm doing mindfulness, but no one knows really what they're doing or why they're doing it. And over time, what I realized was I didn't have the neuroception term, but I'm trying to bring out the best within me. And I'm trying to be right here, right now, and awaken those parts. What I'm hearing from you is neuroception is the goal for all of us.
Yes, it really encompasses all those concepts,
things.
Right? And it's measurable, and it's changeable, and it's trainable. What we've just developed with the Mind Alive Now program is that the person actually walks through greater senses of awareness and recognition, and they notice it. So what we do is we train people, teach people in between the sessions, which are high intensity ultra-relaxation sessions. We tell them how to take that new state of being into the world and identify awareness, physical awareness, internal awareness, recognize that things are more positive. And then the takeaway is the slow emotional trigger. So people will realize after 5 or 6 sessions that they're not getting upset about things that normally would make them upset.
Now that sounds interesting.
That is interesting. The one that really sticks out to me was a mother, and she would say, I no longer yell at my kids. The kids are just, bickering back and forth as young kids do oftentimes, brother and sister picking on one another. And she just no longer really got upset about it. Whereas before it would set her into an emotional, disabled state. Now she just takes it as part of the daily activities. She's happier, the kid's happier. There's just a much more positive relationship.
As a school teacher, I think about that. And I remember those days teaching. And we're very top down. What you said, we're up here trying to get to here.
Correct.
Right? Like try to be calm. And, we do mindfulness and other things to help with that. But the tradition is try to be calm, try to understand the kids, telling parents to try to do it.
Right.
And then the story is, maybe they stop yelling, but you said something very important. They stop yelling, and the parents keep it inside. Now they don't feel good, right? Now they have to cope with that somewhere else. Teachers, same thing. We're trying to be patient, calm, but then we're super stressed out at the end of the day. And now what do we do with that?
Right.
You're saying this isn't about, let's not get so caught up in these symptoms. Let's get to the root cause of something. So just naturally, you're responding different to people from a true space.
Exactly. We would call it resilience. I really call it a total shift in the trigger point. The trigger points become further away. So when someone starts with me, I'll use a metaphor like they start with a 2-lane dirt road and we build a 6-lane highway that they can live in. So that their awareness is much greater, but their reaction to all the things that they're aware of goes down dramatically. It's interesting because as I worked in the body, as I mentioned, beginning with the sports and athletes, and it's always about more is better with the body. You want to be faster, you want to be stronger.
Yeah, of course.
You want to have more endurance, okay? But with the brain, it's just the opposite, less is more.
Less is more.
Yeah, less is more. Like we know, an example of that is being calmer and being more patient is going to give your brain more balance. Or being, we know like intermittent dieting, which is a fasting type of state, right? So less food puts you into ketosis, which is known to improve the brain. So you actually have a ketosis state expands the brain, and there's evolutionary reasons for that. So early man would have an advantage to be starving and their brain getting smarter as they have low caloric intake because they're searching for food.
Right, their instincts kick in. You better get smart real quick so you can get something to eat.
Yeah, if their brain were deteriorating on low caloric intake, we'd be in trouble. Think about it. Because there was low caloric, you had to hunt and gather for that caloric intake, and you had to be smart while you were doing it.
In order to survive. So this goes back to what you said with neuroception. You said this is basically survival 2.0. We're being really smart on how we awaken the survival parts of our brain to no longer try to fight them so we don't be so angst. You're saying to awaken them in a way where we reach our full potential.
Exactly.
That's quite a different shift in perspective for a lot of people out there.
It's a major shift, and by changing the way the embodied signals reach the brain, that's the key thing. That's the key technique that we're employing, very, very successfully. We have other techniques too, so we have a complete program. But that core idea of the embodied therapy, which is quieting the brain as a result. I often say, I stimulate the body to communicate to the mind, to relax and let go.
Stimulate the body to communicate to the mind, to relax and let go.
Correct.
Well, what would you, so just to kind of springboard for a second, so people who are at, like if you're an entrepreneur, you work in the school system, we get a lot of people that come in, school counselors, people that work in mental health, or some parents are watching right now, and you're asking the question, how does it apply to me? How would this apply to a mother or a school teacher, an entrepreneur, business owner that's too busy to take a nap? What do you think on that?
Well, how it applies to them is when they get upset or feel overwhelmed. This will increase their capacity to take on things without getting upset. There's an example that I like to teach, and it's called the sort of the lost key situation. I would always, sometimes years ago, before I developed this technique, I would, misplace my keys, right? You always seem to be running out the door in the morning, you're late.
Fidgeting, looking. And
where are they? They're not on my desk, they're not by the sink, right? And it would create an emotional river of, anxiety and stress, right? After I started developing and improving this technique, I remember the first day I lost my keys or misplaced my keys, the first thought was, I got in the house last night, I know they're in the house. And then from there, I could easily track my way to find those keys in a fraction of the time with no emotional trigger.
Yeah, a lot of people say, I got in the house. They don't say it the way you said it. Like, I got in the house, got in something, usually it's in my pocket. When I lose my keys, that's where I have them. But, we're not necessarily so calm about it. But you're just saying just that reflex, the trigger you were talking about is, now I feel kind of good. I'm okay.
Right.
Yeah, could that, someone may say, like, especially a lot of people work with who are business owners that go, I need my stress. Like I need that oomph to get me forward. Are we losing the oomph, that forward drive?
No, you're not losing the oomph. You're getting more into an observer state. You actually see the pieces of your problems evolving in front of you more. You have a higher degree of awareness.
Wow.
And a slower response. That's part of that less is more concept of the brain. An axiom of that is see more or be aware of more incoming, but react less.
Wow. So now you're sounding like the Olympic athletes. So
Like these Olympic athletes, athletes often use different types of music to make them focus and so forth. And those are all effective ways to do it. But with our system, you train the brain over a period of time. So I took an engineer, he had studied, he's a petroleum engineer in his late 50s, and he had studied the brain for years. He knew about observer state, but he never knew about his embodied signals going to the brain. So once we calmed those signals over the course of 3 or 4 sessions, his whole sense of awareness of his mind, of his life, the way he approached his job shifted dramatically. He took on more information. Instead of being the one that knew the answer, he was a senior engineer. He would ask, well, tell me more. He would open up open-ended questions, and he found people were giving more information and things were just going much, much more effectively.
yeah, he changed his thoughts, his behaviors, and that changed his team, and his team became more effective in return.
And he got, what happens a lot of times when you calm the brain the way we do, you'll get dreamlike visions, and those will have insight. And he had these calming visions of being in ultra calmness and being above the fray. And as a result, he went to a conference and just got a whole bunch of business that he never expected because he was less engaged in terms of pushing and forcing. Another example, like I took a sales guy, and I knew he would respond great, and he said, well, why should I do it? I said, well, did you ever speak up when someone's giving you an objection trying to close the sale? Did you ever speak up and wish you could keep your mouth shut? He said, yeah, most salespeople have, right?
Right.
They get anxious, right? The person has a reasonable question, a reasonable objective, and they jump down and they get anxious and they push too hard. And the result for that salesperson was he just sat back, let it play out. The customer had a better experience. He still got the sale, and it got done in a much more pleasant, interactive way.
And that's neuroception.
And having neuroception balance allows you to do that.
Yeah. So that's interesting. A lot of people that I know, when we talk therapy, it takes such a long conversation to get them to, this is about reaching your best self. They go, oh, I don't want to talk all about this stuff, and I'll feel worse, in the process, and maybe that's true. But the way that you're presenting it is a great way to state it, because we're just trying to help you reach your full potential here.
Exactly.
And this will get rid of that unhealthy stress that you don't need, and maybe allow you to be observer and still very focused at the same time.
Oh yeah, you don't lose your focus, and your focus increases, but it's not an anxiety focus. It's a calmer focus, rather than an adrenal focus where you're anxious and pushing. You got more of a serotonin and acetylcholine where you're balanced and ready for change.
What could you use this technique? I'm thinking, like Healing Springs and LifeWorks Foundation, we're working with first responders, we're working with a lot of military and ex-military, trying to help these men and women find balance. They're the ones that do so much for us. We're trying to help them, give back some and help them find some peace. Because after a long day's work or 10, 20 years of work, in fact, I was on the radio the other day talking about this and hearing from a lot of the law enforcement how they feel so burned out. And they're a little resistant to therapy because they don't necessarily want to go in and just sit down and talk. A lot of these people are very tactile in nature, very active, very smart. How could this process, and we got to talk a little about what specifically it is too, because you got me enticed right now. How could that help first responders, military, ex-military, law enforcement?
Well, it can help anyone in a heightened anxiety state, okay? And the beauty of it is they don't have to do much. A lot of times they have to engage different thought patterns and different behavioral patterns, or they have to explain in traditional psychotherapy, family of history and things that, as you say, they want to be private about. They're just they have a stressful job, right? They need a way to release it.
Right.
And so they show up, and really by doing the embodied therapy, they don't have to really prepare in any way. They just have to be open to what's possible. Okay, so it's very passive on the client's side. I do all the work, or my therapists do all the work. And the result is that after they finish the 40-minute session, they are like super calm. Some people will say, I haven't been this calm since I was 4 years old or 5 years old as a little girl.
Wow.
And a lot of times if they live in what I call a high idle, right? Their anxiety is just a little higher than normal. A little higher because they're just anxious.
I know, yeah.
So
They have to be. Yeah.
They have to be. They're diligent, and they have a little survival. The survival instinct is kicked in a way that it doesn't need to be. But with this world of information overload and traffic and all the pressures that are on us in a modern society, those things become more difficult to regulate.
That makes sense. So then I'm thinking, the therapists who are watching, and our good friend Melissa Kawingle, one of the founders of Healing Springs Ranch, she's amazing. She would say, well, we also need to look at the trauma. So could this process you're talking about also be followed up with therapy and trauma work, or before
Absolutely.
Or after?
Yeah, what we're talking about is the embodied therapy is more systemic. And then there's other techniques that you can use that are much more targeted. So if you have a specific trauma at age 10 or 6 or whenever it may be, there may be memories in there that can be mitigated with a therapy like emotional transformation therapy, invented by Stephen Vasquez, a friend of that you and I both know. And so that technique with light and color is much more targeted. And then you use the systemic approach of vibrating the body in 15 to 20 different ways and hundreds of different frequencies over 40 minutes. That just puts people in a super calm state. And now you have a toolkit where you can go and restructure the way you interact with the world.
Oh, so ETT, Emotional Transformation Therapy, combined with Mind Alive Now. Could you even do that like an art therapist, or maybe
art therapy? Yeah, I mean, there's so many other things that support that, right? I like the ETT therapy and the Mind Alive Now because those are high intensity and people feel immediate shifts. But things like art therapy or movement therapy or aromatherapy or any number of things, exercise, high intensity exercise, they all are going to affect the brain. But you need a framework in which to integrate the new states. And that's really where the whole world becomes part of healing that person and resetting their emotional brain through neuroception balance.
It's powerful. And when I'm sitting here with you, I feel so calm. To be honest, I can tell you must be doing the table on yourself or working through it because it's.
Well, I get used to it. Yeah. The vibration. I'm in the vibration a lot. It obviously interacting with vibration and working on other people as well as doing it for myself. And it creates a whole new state of being. I used to be a crazy man. Not really, but
but I know what you mean.
I was a lot more anxious than I am now. For sure.
Yeah,
it was. I would get upset about things. And when I first learned this technique, I had a nice thing to say. I would say, the buttons are there for my wife to push, but I disconnected the wires. She would still, talk about the dishes or the garbage, the things that aren't really the problem, but they become sort of this bigger than life type of task. And all those are really, okay, yes, ma'am, yes, dear. And do the task without the emotional trigger. And that's the beauty.
That's the beauty. So a lot of husbands and wives are going to want to come do this.
Husbands and wives, relationships, all sorts of. I've done some couples. I've done a number of couples, and relationships can shift dramatically. I work with people in transition. I can't tell you how many people got jobs while they came to me and they thought, wow, I really need a job and I'm going to spend this money to do this. And by the end of the sessions, before the end of the sessions, they would have a job or have a lead for a job that would close. So, yeah, it really, it's an emergent process. Emergent, I mean, it just expands and encompasses more of the environment, and you just feel more alive. That's why we call it Mind Alive.
That's nice. So we're starting to come to a close with the time, but I want to ask a couple of questions. One is, what would be your vision with this neuroception? What's your vision for the world? How would this change the world, or what is it you wish for the world?
Well, I think neuroception, balancing neuroception is going to change the world dramatically because people are going to be calmer. They're going to be more interactive with each other, more friendly. There's going to be more positive energy. People not worrying about things. You know, we create a lot of things to worry about that aren't always going to happen. There's a possibility that something may happen, but a lot of times we worry about it more than it deserves.
Right.
We make it bigger than life because the probability of that happening is pretty remote a lot of times, you know. But you know, yet we worry about it in a disproportionate way. All that goes away. That's the beauty. The beauty, it's changed my life in terms of how I process the world and the people around me. And so even one person, you know, in family therapy, you get one person to shift, and the others are going to follow suit. And I've seen that, you know. One woman came in recently, and then after 2 weeks, she got her husband to come in. And he's having an amazing experience.
Wow.
In a way that he never imagined.
That's powerful. It's powerful. I'm going to have to introduce you to a lot of people that want your help. And one I'm thinking in particular, a friend of ours, Michael Moulton, or M2 The Rock, his show, he talks about I live in fear, how so many of us do, and you're saying you don't have to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We can reset the nervous system so that the way you're processing those signals just puts you in more of a calm state, happier, free to be.
Who you want to be.
Yeah. More being, less doing.
Yeah.
And most people live in a doing world. And that's you know, analytical world, you know, doing world. You know, it starts early, right? In school, we get rewarded for analyzing things, whether it be a math problem or a little paragraph in a book. We analyze, what does it mean? You know, but there's not enough being, and so people get more and more upset and engaged in a way that's not healthy.
Right. So last question before I ask how people can find you. What about someone who, if they're we have a lot of people who watch who are in 12-step programs, and they're great, amazing friends of mine. Very, very, and they're all wonderful. I've seen it, you know, the way they work a program, where they make change. One of the things they tell me is, you know, they like therapy, they like other things, they respect it, but they don't necessarily want to give up their 12-step program or be told that that's not, you know, the right way to do it. Is there a way where this Neuroception, Mind Alive Now, could work with people who are in like 12-step recovery?
Oh, absolutely.
And still maintain their program?
Yeah, because you really need the framework in which to move into, right? So the 12-step program is an excellent way to get yourself out of an addictive state, change the whole. It is an emergent process, right? What we do is we take the body. One of the inhibitors to going through the 12 steps is the energies that are stored in your body. And when you release those and change those, the 12-step becomes easier, faster, more productive. So you don't change that. You need the 12-step program. This doesn't eliminate. This is sort of like rocket fuel for a 12-step program. You know,
it just
makes it go. It makes it go easier. It doesn't make it as hard. It doesn't make people. I had a gal who was anxious for most of her life. She had a trauma at 10 years of age. She came to me at 37 years of age, and she just drank a glass of wine every night because she wanted to unwind. I don't think she was really alcoholic, because after 6 sessions with me, she just gave up the wine because she didn't need it. And she just was able to regulate her emotions in a way that no more whine, no more stuttering, no more biting her lip, being able to interact in family dynamics. Normally would knock her into the bedroom. She could interact all of Christmas, all of the Thanksgiving this past year. So it changes people's lives, and that's a profound example, but it'll change anyone who wants to be more aware, not jump down to, interrupt the customer in the sales process. Right. That's a little thing, but it makes everybody happier. So neuroception balance is contagious, and we teach people how to apply it in their lives that make their lives more fulfilling.
And if they want to do that, how do they find you?
They find me at mindalivenow.com. It's a website that will tell you all about the Mind Alive program, and that's where you find me. Send me an email and we'll set up a time when you can come in and try the experience. And if you want to do the 12-day program, it takes about 4 to 6 weeks depending on your schedule. And we just love to have new clients. We're always learning from people who come in and give us a new challenge to solve.
Sounds exciting. I'll definitely be down there. You're in Austin. I'll be coming to see you.
You're welcome, John, anytime.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Mel. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Neuroception. So that's something that anybody's going to want to have. Be calmer, not just from the top down, from the bottom up. Change life in your family. Can work with the 12 steps, can work with therapy, or maybe just reach your full potential. It was a great show today. I hope you enjoyed it, and hope you felt some of the calm that I felt just by sitting next to this man. And we'll see you next time.